Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. So I am back with another word from the good Lord. Um Earlier in the afternoon I was just like trying to meditate, trying to pray, like just asking God what word I should deliver here on this platform. And because I don't want to just be doing it, I want to be intentional about it, and I just want to be sure that God is, a part of it, and I'm not just speaking gibberish, but God is really like using me as a vessel to put forth a word that is going to be beneficial to someone's life and really like bring forth the necessary change to my life and to the people that are going to be listening. So, the word for today I've decided to title Marked, and we are going to get a scripture from Revelation 7, which says, Revelation 7, verse 1 says, "After this, I saw four angels standing at the four corners of the earth, holding back the four winds of the earth to prevent any wind from blowing on the land or on the sea or any tree. Then I saw an angel coming from the east, having the seal of the living God. He called out in a loud voice to the four angels who had been given power to harm the land and the sea. 'Do not harm the land or the sea or the trees until we put a seal on the forehead of the servant of God.'" So until they put a mark, until they put some form of indication on the people that are supposed to be spared from this disaster that's supposed to happen. What we know now is that there has never been a more critical of a time to be marked. There's never been more desperate of a time to be marked, to be called, to be set apart, to be distinguished. With everything that is going on in the world, I am desperate to just somehow be set apart. When one thing is happening to the world, I need to be set apart. I need to be spared from the disasters that are clearly happening before all our eyes. And if I think of someone to reference all of this favor, all of this grace on, it's Joseph, who at the age of 17, as theology teaches us, had a dream, and he shared that dream with his brothers. Joseph was already his father's favorite. His father was very open about it. He favored him amongst his 11 brothers, and it wasn't a secret. And they had already been offended by the treatment that Joseph was specifically getting from the father. And as if that was not enough, he went on to share that he had had a dream, and in the dream, God was clearly telling him that his brothers would bow down before him. And of course, they were offended and they wanted to kill him. Now, his older brother Reuben was against him being killed, so he suggested that instead of killing him, let us just throw this man into a pit, because he was thinking in his mind before the end of the day, he was going to go and rescue him. But before he could rescue him, while he was away, his other brothers sold him to the Egyptian merchants. And when he came back, it was already too late. He was just gone, just like that. But throughout this whole reading, the Bible consistently tells us that God was with him. God was with him. Whatever trial, tribulation, challenge he was going through, God was with him. Now, when he arrives in Potiphar's house, Potiphar clearly sees that God's hand is upon Joseph, because everything that he touches just turns into gold. He immediately wins his favor. Potiphar puts him in charge of his whole kingdom, puts him in charge of everything that he owns except his wife. Now, the Bible tells us that Joseph was good looking, was well built, and Potiphar's wife, day in and day out, would try to seduce him to a point where she felt offended that he wasn't giving in, so she accused him of raping her. Now, Joseph's reality takes a turn for the worse, because he's now sent to jail because he's now being accused of wanting to rape Potiphar's wife. But what does the Bible say when he gets to jail? God is with him. God is with him. God is still with him. So he still has favor while in the pit. And the God puts him in charge of all the other prisoners, because God was with him, because he was marked. His destiny was written out to be a certain way based on the circumstances that were happening at the time. But because he was marked, because he was called, because of God's favor and grace that was upon him, That was not his reality. So while in the prison, he's in charge of two other prisoners. One, they both have certain dreams, and the one guy who was a cupbearer has a dream that he's going to be released in a few days. And Joseph asks him, when you do get released, do not forget me. But I'm just trying to paraphrase and give you a bit of a background story before I can put my point across. So, but when the cupbearer is released, he forgets about Joseph. And it's only years after, when Pharaoh says that he has a dream that the seven thin cows were being eaten by the seven fat cows, blah 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 blah. Then he says, actually, I was in prison with someone that was able to interpret dreams. Now Joseph is called out of prison into Pharaoh's palace to interpret the dream, and because he's able to do that, as a result, saving all of Egypt, they put him in charge of all of Egypt because God was with him. So, all of this to say, when Joseph was being sold as a slave, he had no idea how events were going to turn out. You and I, when we're reading his story, we already know what's happening. But throughout the year, it says, according to theology, Joseph had the dream when he was 17 years old, but he was put in charge of Egypt when he was 30 years old. He had to wait 7 more years for the 7 good years to pass until he could meet his family, until he could meet his brothers, so they could bow down before him. So imagine how long it took. It took over 20 years for the dream to come to life. And that's a word for me too, because if I'm being honest, I also have situations where I know God has said this thing. I know God has given me this dream. I know God has given me this idea. I know God has given me this promise. And it's supposed to unfold in a certain way. What I like about Joseph's story is the fact that it teaches us that just because you're called doesn't mean life is going to be easy. And just because God has given you a dream does not mean it's going to unfold within a specific amount of time that is ideal to you. And it doesn't mean that there aren't going to be any challenges, there aren't going to be any highs and lows and ups and downs and trials and tribulations and things that'll set you back. I think in Joseph's case, we learn how to remain faithful even in the midst of disappointment, and how actually to not allow disappointment to be an excuse for disobedience, because he could have easily said, all right, God, this is what you had said a long time ago, and clearly that is not happening, so I'm just going to do things my way. But that's not what he said. He remained faithful. How many people can say that about their journey? How many people can say, I trusted God to be married, so I wasn't dating around, I wasn't fooling around, I just remained pure, and when it didn't happen over several years, I remained faithful? I don't feel like a lot of people can say that, because we're too quick to give up on God's promises over our lives. We're too quick to assume that whatever God has said is not true because of one inconvenience. And what Joseph teaches us is to remain committed to what the Lord has shown you. Now, I don't know what God has shown you. I don't know what destiny has revealed before your eyes and what destination has shown you that has clearly taking you. But I just want to remind you that it took years for Joseph to reach the place that God had called him for. It took years. Even though the Lord knew that his hand was upon King David, and even though he had sent Samuel to anoint him at a young age, it took years and years and years. It took being tortured and being haunted by Saul for him to actually at the end become king. So really, guys, when we give up because of one inconvenience, who are we really cheating, when we have so many references in the Bible of great men, great women? Esther, for an example, had to Esther had to wait a whole year, had to prepare a whole year before she could get into the king's palace. But we want things to happen overnight. And I'm not here to preach because I'm not perfect either, and I'm not a preacher, and I'm not anything like that. I just want us to have a conversation, like how realistic are we being actually, if we just want to throw in the towel and just quickly give up because one thing that we expected to work a certain way did not go as we had planned or as we had hoped. Let us not allow the devil to tear us from our destiny because of the lies that he keeps whispering. Greatness takes time. Being great takes time. Reaching your destiny takes time. God's promise fulfilling in your life takes time. Like, we need to let go of this idea of instant gratification, of instant success, of instant wealth, of instant everything, as if we're dealing with a God that's a magician. God is not a magician. He's a miracle worker, but he's not a magician. And he will not give us things at a time where that gift will hurt us, or that gift will keep us from reaching our destiny. So I just want us to really reflect and meditate on the people and the references that we have in the Bible of people who we aspire to be like and have as much impact as they've had, and really look at their story and look at their journey and the responses that they gave to the different circumstances, different situations that they came across. Joseph could have easily given up when they sent him, actually, when the first time that they sent him as a slave to Egypt. That's when he was supposed to have given up. But he did not give up. Instead, he maintained a good attitude to a point where he was put in charge of everything. You think Potiphar would have put him in charge if he was like nasty and like dragging his feet all the time, upset that his brothers had sold him as a slave? No, he wouldn't have. He obviously did that because he was putting in the work. He was positive. He was doing all that he was supposed to do and more. Hence, he won his favor. When they put him in charge of all the other prisoners, it is because he got there, he maintained a good attitude, and he maintained a good spirit, a good character, regardless of the circumstances that were before him. So I just want to remind us today, if you know that God has called you for something bigger than you can do for yourself, I'm talking to you. As much as there are different challenges, there are different situations, there are things that we need that we don't have at the time, that sort of slow down the process for everyone. You have to keep your eyes on the goal. You have to keep your eyes on the Lord's promise over your life, regardless of the situations that are happening. If there's one thing that I've come to learn about God, it is that he is not a liar, and he's not a mean beast that is just sitting and looking down on everyone and thinking how he can like ruin your day by giving you this nice dream only to not fulfill it. No, he's a good God. He's a good father. If he says he wants to do something for you, it is because he wants to do something for you, not because he wants you to get excited so he can disappoint you so you can be sad. That's not God. That's not how God is. And the devil sort of teaches us that God is something else when he's not. If he says he wants to bless you in a certain way, it is because he is prepared to bless you in that way. So, yes, my whole point of me coming here, it is to just remind you that you are marked, that regardless of the price hikes, regardless of the economy going like that, regardless of everything that is happening around the world, scarcity of literally everything, even the most basic things that we need, you are marked and you are set apart. And regardless of however the story ends, I don't care if the whole world ends taken over by robots or whatever. I know that I'm good because God has called me for a life of prosperity, and his promises that he's made for me personally and in the Bible, he will fulfill that. He will fulfill that. So I'm not even going to spend a second being anxious because I know the kind of God that I'm dealing with. And if you don't know the kind of God that you're dealing with, then you have a responsibility to learn. Because if you think that he can tell you something and not do it, then that clearly means that you don't know God, and you have a responsibility to create time and really learn about this God and have a personal experience with him and really learn him for yourself and have a personalized, for lack of a better word, experience with him. And I do pray that that grace and that glory and that favor is upon my life and is upon your life and is upon all of our lives, because really we need it. I don't want to be relying on anything else if it is not God, because anything that's not God is not able to do things at the maximum capacity. So I'm not trying to cheat myself. So I will be patient, and I will be giving thanks, and I will be positive, and I will do everything that I need to do in order for him to work. Even if he's working silently, even if he's like taking me through every step of the way, regardless of the situation, I will believe that God is truly working, because he said that he's gonna work. And that's just what I wanted to remind everyone as well. It is that if you are called and God has told you that he has called you, and then he's called you and you have nothing to worry about, regardless of what's going on right now, trust the process. Trust what he has said over your life. And yes, that's my message for the day. Thank you for tuning in. Bye.